Hi guys, welcome to a video, and in today's video I just wanted to talk about lesbian films which I think are historically important. So I'm going to be talking about films which aren't just known for being good films, but they're also significant in terms of breaking ground in lesbian film or offering representation or being socially and culturally important. So the first film is Mad Shed in Uniform. This film was made in 1931 and it is the first ever lesbian themed feature film in existence, as far as I'm aware, which makes it incredibly significant because it is literally the start of lesbian filmmaking. Now, of course, the film itself is about a teacher-student romance and it's incredibly tragic and not necessarily great in terms of representation, but it's still significant in terms of representation because some representation is better than none, especially in the 1930s. I said representation a lot just then. The next film on my list is Rafiki. Now, this is a somewhat more recent film and I think it's historically important because it's a film which highlights the negative attitudes towards lesbians in Nairobi, Kenya. The film offers not only black lesbians representation, but it also offers black lesbians representation in a non-Western setting, which is still very rare. Also, I just think the film is incredibly well made. It's one of the most well-made films that I've ever seen, but it highlights some really serious issues that LGBT people in general face in Kenya. The next movie is Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Now, I will just quickly say I'm glad that I didn't die before I got to watch this movie because I've never seen anything like it, and I think I can safely say I may never see anything like it ever again. The reason I think this film is historically important in terms of lesbian film is I've never seen women or lesbians represented so thoughtfully or intimately on the screen. This film just has an authenticity which I've never seen anywhere else, and I think this film is significant for its use of the female gaze, something which has been blocked out of cinema since filmmaking began. And I think a lot of lesbians recognise that Portrait is an incredibly important film, and again, just an incredible piece of work. It's chef's kiss. The next film is Loving Annabelle. Now, I know this is controversial because again, it's about a teacher-student romance, and from what I've read, it was actually based on Mad Shed in Uniform, but I also think that's why it's important to contrast it against something that was made in 1931. Loving Annabelle was made in a time where lesbian creators really struggled to make film, and she worked long and hard to raise the funds to make this film. And if we compare Loving Annabelle to Mad Shed in Uniform, we can really see how much more developed Loving Annabelle is in terms of lesbianism. The next film is The Miseducation of Cameron Post. Now, I think this film is important because it highlights the damaging effects of conversion therapy on young gay people, and I've never seen that explored so seriously before in lesbian film, and I think that's why this film is quite important because it offers a kind of inside perspective on what it's like to be subjected to conversion therapy and how horrendous it is. The next film is Desert Hearts. Now, I've included this film because, again, the director worked long and hard to secure the finance for making this film, and the director was also the first lesbian director to create a sex scene in a film with two women and have it be seen by a general movie-going audience. So Desert Hearts contains one of the first intimate scenes on film created by a lesbian, which I think makes it quite historically important. The next film is The Watermelon Woman. Now, this film is historically important because it was the first ever lesbian film to have a black lesbian director. The film is very much a product of the 90s, and it not only highlights issues around sexuality but also around race. And Cheryl Dunye, the director, had to raise most of the funds to make this film herself, and it stands out in terms of authenticity and giving a lot of black lesbians a voice and representation on screen. The next film is Saving Face. Now, this film is historically important because it's one of the earliest forms of Asian lesbian representation in film. Again, it was made in a time where lesbian filmmaking was few and far between, and women had to really struggle to kind of raise funds and make connections and, you know, just struggle to get film made. The film is obviously significant in terms of Asian lesbian representation, and Alice Wu actually wrote it as a novel before she changed her mind and turned it into a film. It's also important to know that the studios actually tried to whitewash Saving Face. They asked Alice Wu to make the love interest a white woman. Luckily, Alice Wu stood her ground, and I'd say she had to work twice as hard to kind of give us Saving Face than a lot of white women have had to work to create lesbian film. It's not been easy for anybody, but I think we can acknowledge it's been, you know, that much harder for non-white women to create film in general, let alone lesbian film. So that's why it's historically important. The next film is But I'm a Cheerleader. Now, I think this film is historically important because it's one of the earliest lesbian romantic comedies that I've seen. And the film not only explores sexuality, it also kind of highlights the ridiculousness of gender roles and heteronormativity. And this representation in the time it was made was pretty much an oasis for LGBT people in general, because the film doesn't just explore lesbianism, it also kind of steps outside of that box, and it's a much earlier, less serious version of the Miseducation of Cameron Post in a way. It kind of does tackle conversion therapy, but I think in a much more digestible and comedic way, as much as it can be comedic. Okay guys, thanks for watching. Those are the lesbian films which I think are most historically important to the community. Please feel free to let me know lesbian films that you think are historically important and also why you think that. Don't forget to subscribe for instant disappointment, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.